Yemenis continue celebrating the 59th anniversary of the 26th September Revolution in spite of Houthi coup. Internally displaced people's sufferings aggravates as the conflict is expanding nationwide. Houthi rebels attack joint forces in Hodeidah, violating the Stockholm Peace Agreement. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Shazad Abdelbey. Yemeni people inside and outside continue celebrating the 26th of September revolution. This reflects a total rejection of the Houthi rebel rule, which has devastated the country severely. More on this story is within this report.
Despite the hardship that engulfed the nation, Yemeni people celebrated the 59th anniversary of the 26th of September revolution. Yemeni people's persistence in lighting September's flame comes as a symbol of their refusal to Houthis' rule in which the country is overwhelmed. The Houthis' unjust coup that brought Yemen back to the past forgotten days of the Imam's rule forces the country into a new reality of ignorance, backwardness, and famine. The militia's agenda wants to deprive the country of its historic achievements that were acquired through strife and blood. The rebels try to falsify Yemeni facts through their mouthpieces in media and beneficiaries who are trying to justify their coup against legitimacy, democracy, and statehood, rather than keeping the accomplishments of the real September Revolution in 1962 by building on the urbanization breakthrough that witnessed real education, building of the state, and infrastructure transformation. The Yemenis are now searching for wood to cook their food. The facts in Yemen are clear. The ongoing war consumed the human wealth and civilization. Nearly 250,000 killed, around 4 million displaced, and other 24 million need humanitarian assistance to stay alive. The country is described as the worst humanitarian crisis on the whole earth. The crisis in Yemen is stoked and ignored by foreign agendas who continue to push on their armies into more conflict. The Houthis are the Iranian army in Yemen. They discarded their pan-Yemeni dream, represented in the 26th of September revolution, for an Iranian cloak that has hidden aspirations in the region. All of that comes on the expense of the poor people in Yemen. And now the question lies, where will the country head to? Will the Yemenis lie behind the resistance to return back their revolutionary dream, or let the Houthi rebels control what is remaining?
The injured fighters of the National Resistance have celebrated the 26th September Revolution in Cairo. They renewed commitment to fight against Houthi rebels and stressing the importance of celebrating this great national occasion. Houthi militia are causing the displacement of millions of Yemenis, uprooting them from their areas and villages, and imposing a life of displacement on them. More on the story is within this report.
Year after year, the Houthi rebels are causing the displacement of thousands of Yemenis, uprooting them from their areas and villages, imposing a life of displacement on them. In a true embodiment of the human tragedy left by the war in Yemen nearly 6 years ago, the International Organization for Migration announced that at least 172,000 people were displaced from their homes during the past year 2020 due to the conflict. The organization had previously announced that the Maghreb Governorate is the region that witnessed the highest rate of displacement, indicating that Maghreb City alone received more than 73,000 new displaced people last year. The International Organization for Migration clarified that some families have been displaced for the 4th and 5th time due to the continuation and expansion of the fighting, and their suffering is increasing in light of the lack of life-saving assistance. These are the most affected by the repercussions of the war. Despite receiving this large number of displaced people in camps allocated by local and international organizations working in the relief field, many complaints were raised about the poor equipment of the camps, including lack of potable water, scarcity of toilets, and the deterioration of tents that do not protect hundreds of families from the repercussions of winter nor the sun. The International Organization for Migration pointed out that the recent movement of the fighting fronts to areas in Al-Baida makes the displacement needs increase even more, affecting civilians and their homes at alarming rates. Yemenis can take several days to flee from one city to another in their own same country. What is the fault of these people who are forced to leave everything behind? Their houses, their families, their work, and all their belongings. And what is the fault of their children who are obliged to leave their studies, schools, houses, and friends, heading to another place they know nothing about? This difficult option that these people are forced to take just because their city was looted and they no longer have a safe place to live in with their children in a country divided by a common war.
Joint forces thwarted an infiltration by Houthi militia on their positions in Durayhimi, south of Hodeidah. During the operation, 2 Houthi militants were killed and third one captured, while others were injured. The militia's daily attacks are considered and violations of Stockholm Agreement. Further, the joint forces discovered minefield left by Houthi militia. It's thought that such mines are internationally banned. The military media of the joint forces reported that the discovered minefield extends over large areas southwest of Hais. The field contains large quantities of banned anti-personnel mines. In Ma'rib, dozens of Houthi militia members were killed while trying to penetrate positions in Al-Qassara front. It was reported that about 40 Houthi militants were killed as they were attacking government forces' positions. In Taiz, government forces thwarted several Houthi attacks on a number of fronts. According to a military source, the government forces managed to repel Houthi attacks in the city. Further violent confrontations took place between Houthis and government forces in Al-Aqrut front when rebels tried to penetrate into more military positions. Different types of light, medium, and heavy weapons were used during the confrontations. Education in Yemen has become either among the ruins of destruction or under the shades of trees. The following report sheds light on the challenges facing students in rural areas in Taiz.
Students in the western countryside of Taiz continue to suffer as they insist on getting education and study under the trees around their homes, in the absence of any governmental or humanitarian organizations. An entire generation of children in Yemen faces a bleak future because of limited or no access to education. Even those who remain in school are not getting the quality education they need. According to UNICEF, nearly 500,000 children have dropped out of school since the 2015 escalation of conflict in Yemen, bringing the total number of out-of-school children to 2 million. Meanwhile, almost 3/4 of public school teachers have not been paid their salaries in over a year, putting the education of an additional 4.5 million children at grave risk. Education in Yemen has become either among the ruins of destruction or under the shade of trees as a last resort to obtain primary and preparatory education for students. From the countryside of Maknaba district in Taiz, schools have become a daily target for Houthi shells and missiles of death as the country enters new path of tragedies and pain at all levels, the most important of which is the right to education. 250 male and female students are taught by 4 teachers in places no more than 2 kilometers from the confrontation area in Al-Tawir west of Taiz, after the students stopped receiving education for more than 2 years because the militia had taken their school as a military barracks. The perseverance of these students to continue their education made a number of teachers voluntarily teach them without any compensation, and they did not receive any return from the education office. Also, the concerned authorities abandoned them and left them grappling with the bitterness of the privation and seriousness of the situation left by the militia, with its continuous bombing and attacks on educational facilities and residential areas. El-Tawir area in Taiz witnesses daily confrontations between government forces and the Irani-backed militia, forcing these students and their families to flee from the front lines to nearby villages that they see as safer than their homes to live and learn there. Would the suffering of students in Yemen come to an end? Only time can tell.
Coming next. Angry rallies in Taiz and Ebian over sharp drops of national currency. and hard living conditions amid government indifference.
أقول لك راحت بالغداء لأهلها شلت الغداء وراحت بالأهلها في المزرعة، والمزرعة ركبت على حمار ما حتى نص المزرعة وانفجر فيها اللغم، دعست على اللغم وانفجر فيهم. الحمار انتهى الماء ترفت بكعت رجليها كامل. نغير منها نغير الشبعلة اللي هي البنت سابها من دور رجليها اللي صافناها طبية أقرب طبية وصافناها لا هي بطلت رجليها كامل.
قلت أزود هلي وقابل لي لعام وطبعت تحت الزوايا.
Welcome back. Mass demonstrations in Taiz and Abiyan continued against the collapse of the national currency and the deterioration economic situation. Protesters demanded resignation of the government as it proved inefficient in putting an end to this terrible situation. More on the story is within this report.
Hundreds of protesters in Taiz took to streets on Monday as unrest over poverty spread in areas held by the government.
People of Taiz denounce the deterioration of living conditions, high exchange rate, and the collapse of the local currency. We call on the government to consider this alarming situation. The government actions will confirm whether the government will remain or not. If the government is the reason why people starve, then there is no difference between it and the militia that bombs all the citizens.
Dozens of people blocked streets and entrances to several districts with rocks and burning tires. Earlier this month, 3 people were killed in violent protests in Aden and other southern cities controlled by the government. On Monday, security forces and armed men fired shots in the air to stop protesters from ripping apart a poster of the Yemeni president, according to witnesses. Police spokesperson Osama Sharabi said security forces are committed to safeguarding citizens' rights to peaceful means of expression, but would not allow any attacks on public and private interests. Similarly, Zanzibar and Abiyan witnessed a total civil disobedience and angry protests, denouncing the crumbling living conditions. Civil disobedience paralyzed the city wholly, with all shops closed. All private institutions were closed too, except for medical centers and clinics. The disobedience was accompanied by angry protests during which they burned tires and blocked roads. Protesters denounced the silence of local authorities, who stood helpless in the face of the deteriorating conditions and sharp drops of the currency.
We want to know why prices are so high and why all the basic sectors are falling apart. Education and health sectors. Yemen is not a poor country, but worse than that, it is full of disasters and is totally destroyed. What about the government and the Prime Minister? Why is it not intervening to address the situation?
Meanwhile, the central bank released a statement indicating that no decision was made to close exchange companies and facilities. In fact, the decision was taken by the Money Changers Association. The statement of the central bank rejected the decision of the Exchanges Association and their recent initiative to suspend their activity. The bank officials described the decision as an escape from facing the terrible reality of the money market. It is along of a number of decisions that have negatively affected the activity of the banking system, the statement added. The central bank claims its responsibility for the recent currency drop and accuses Money Changers Association of doing so. The government indifference continue and no decisive actions has been made yet. In the end, the only victim is the Yemeni, who suffers from Houthi barbarism and the neglect of the government.
In Aden, a wave of angry protests took place yesterday evening in a number of districts. Protesters denounced the continued deterioration of services and the collapse of the national currency, along with the problem of power cutoff. Hundreds of angry citizens took to the streets in Crater, denouncing the deterioration of the living conditions and disrupted services. Local people stated that the electric power cuts increased to 10 hours a day. Mega projects are the landmark for Egypt in the current time. The Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said that the biggest unit for water treatment worldwide in Bursaid Governorate. More on the story is within this report.
On stable feet, the Arab Republic of Egypt is moving ahead towards more progress and construction by inaugurating new strategic mega projects nationwide. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, accompanied by state figures, inaugurated the biggest worldwide unit for water treatment in Bursaid Governorate. The unit, built by Egyptian hands, set a new Guinness record with a total cost of 20 billion Egyptian pound that equals $1.2 billion. The unit's capacity reaches 5.6 million cubic meters per day. It aims at the reclamation of about 500,000 acres and developing the Sinai Peninsula. The mega treatment unit also aims at treating the salinity of agricultural drainage water and preventing seawater from mixing with the underground one. During the inauguration, el-Sisi stressed the importance of this project in supporting agriculture within the context of the ongoing sustainable development in the new Egyptian Great Republic.
This treatment unit works on around 2 billion liters of water that went before to the Manzala Lake and the Mediterranean Sea. This program was done to irrigate 500,000 acres. The same is said for the new delta.
Bursaid new water treatment unit will not be the last. Another mega unit is being built in the delta to reclaim 1 million acres that will benefit thousands of farmers and will attain sufficiency for more than 100 million Egyptians. The new treatment unit will contribute in supporting the national economy through exporting agricultural products to world markets. Egypt is passing through a comprehensive renaissance in all fields, which is reflected on the ground and is felt by the Egyptians. In Egypt, difficulties are being turned into possibilities with the strong will of the leadership to achieve the decent life for all Egyptians.
Turning back to Yemen, the National Committee Against Coronavirus announced 28 new cases of the COVID-19 in 4 governorates. Also, 6 deaths were recorded plus 35 recovered cases. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 9,016, including 1,709 deaths. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Yemenis continue celebrating the 59th anniversary of the 26th September Revolution in spite of Houthi coup. Internally displaced people's sufferings aggravates as the conflict is expanding nationwide. Houthi rebels attack joint forces in Hodeidah, violating the Stock and Peace Agreement. This is the end of the news. Thank you for watching.